Welcome to part 2 of this still life demonstration with a gray layout that we're going to finish up. I'm just gesturing out some flowers here and a table in the background. And up here in the swan planter, I'm starting to draw in some flowers. I'm using contours to place where those flowers will go. Another way of placing things would be to use the actual brushstroke to be the thing. So to think about it this way, there's one brushstroke and there's another brushstroke, and that is the leaf. So that's just another way to think about how you place things, and you could just fill in the shape, and then you don't have to worry about contours. Here I'm building up the structure of these flowers with a lighter gray. As I go back in here and I'm looking at the space here, there's a light area, and that is where this urn thing is basically, this comes out a little bit. That's where the base of that is sitting, and that's where I really see some light kind of just popping out at me. So this is a critical point in the composition because all three major bodies converge at this point. The fish is in the front, the swan is in the middle, and the urn is in the background. I need to get those relationships just right to get the space to work. Now we want to show an ellipse. So the front of the ellipse, the back of the ellipse. So if I want it to be in the middle, up, and then I want it to curve around. So basically gesturing this out. But this is the widest point, and then it comes down all the way out, but then back down. So, and what I see is less and less of it. You know, as it converges, it gets down like this, but then it curves. It never quite comes to a point. I have a bigger brush here for a shadow color, and what I'm going to do is really darken some areas. Even though this is very loosely drawn, that's okay. I don't want to get too specific at this point. Okay, this is in shadow, but what I want to do is lighten it up because it's a lighter shadow. And so I'm going to basically pull some of that. It's going to help it stand out from the background. It's got those little ridges, which I can indicate a few. Also, this part of the tail. This part of the body kind of overlaps onto that. Okay. There's this, I really want to maybe, instead of having a dark line there, really show that with a little bit lighter color. And then I've got this little wing, tiny little flipper. And then I want to indicate some scales. So I made a lighter color for this too, although it's still a shadow color. It just helps create some texture, or rather, I should say, it helps create some structure in the shadows. But then the next thing I want to do is basically add some shadow, make it a little bit darker in the front of this, even darker shadow where I'm seeing it. So now because it is all, it's all shadow, there's little bits of light, but not a lot. So I'm dealing with, dark shadow and light shadows. The cast shadow from the fish is pretty dark, which is to be expected, that cast shadows tend to be dark. So the front of the fish here is pretty dark, but even more so is the front of the plane of this box. Both of them are dark because they're facing directly away from the light source, and a little blue in that will make that work even better. The top of this box will get some light, but the side here is actually a shadow color. It doesn't look like it's in shadow right now, but that's because everything is gray. It's going to dry darker, and once I add the lights, those shadows will really fall into place. Now, I'm going to look at the box that the swan and the urn are sitting on. We can't see a lot of it, but this negative space right in here is the same side, similar to the lighter side that the fish is on. So I want to paint it a shadow color, but not as dark as it is painted on the side away from the light. I can also paint the tail on the fish a little bit lighter, which helps to push the fish forward in space and the box back. And here I'm adding some touches of a little bit lighter gray to the flowers to indicate some structure. On the urn, I'm adding a much lighter gray, then a mixture of the light and dark gray in between, so we have a mid-tone. I'm adding some touches to indicate the fluting on the urn, as well as some other details. I want to make these wings on this thing a little narrower. So coming down here, and then comes up, comes out here, and then back up, so that we have a little bit more room to show the lights on the urn. We didn't really have any room for that, so we're starting to see a little bit of that. This is a little light area too. It's the top of the box, but if you don't know exactly what you're looking at and you do see some light, just put it in. That's okay. Sometimes you don't know what you're seeing, but you're seeing light, so put in the light. So this part underneath is it's pretty dark, so it's a darker shadow that comes up. Let me get a little bit more dark here. Pull that up. It really wasn't that dark, was it? Oh, I'm getting a little bit of it. Okay, that's good. And there's a little bit here in the wing area under, it's a little bit of form that gives that some shadow. I'm gonna put a little bit of shadow here too. And none of this is really finished. It's just playing with the forms that I'm seeing. This is very dark next to the lights. So I'm gonna paint the shape of that bird's head. The beak comes down right there like that. And I'm gonna use this width of the brush to basically, again, like that is almost the whole neck, but not quite. Because part of the neck is gonna be in light, and it comes and then it meets the chest up here. So I'll add some light onto that, but right now I really wanna just get the dark in there. And it's, I can kind of stroke some of this on there. So, as I look at this, I'm trying to think, what else do I need? So I want to make sure that this eye looks is right there. So basically paint that in dark. I got a little bit more, paint some of this in darker too. Just lightly. And we're gonna look basically, I haven't done much with the urn back there. I really do need to fix that. I think what I want to do is get some blue, because that'll show up better than anything, because there's so much brown and black and stuff. So take a little blue across, because it will contrast with what I'm seeing, with what's on here, and then gesture through that. If it's not right, it's going to show up, and so you got to really be, careful with it. Now I see this shape very clearly. This is dark, and so I can clarify that shape if I take another brush with the gray, oops, and basically use that. I got a lot of water in this, but basically to draw that shape. Now we see the shape of that face against the background. Background will probably get a little bit darker, but we want to make sure we get that same shape over here. That's the trick. Easy to get one, not always easy to get both the same. So, okay, and then, looking into this, the tricky thing is it's light in here, and it still is not my light color, but it is light in here, inside. And then here, the light is outside and it's dark in here. So I need to darken that up. And then let's see if we can go back and with some of this lighter gray, but still not the highlight. And why not the highlight yet? You know what? The highlight's gonna really stick out like a sore thumb if I go on top of this dark. I'll work it out with colors that are a little closer together. And then I go for the highlights. And here, strangely enough, it's still in shadow here because it's tilted down. The light doesn't start to hit till it's a little bit lower. And that's going to be coming down here. The light's going to hit here. It looks like we're missing some of that, but that's actually a highlight. The highlight will actually bring that out. We don't want that to come to a point. It's still a little soft. That's okay. No reason to get completely defined yet. I'm going to do, there's some light on the top of that eyeball because it is a rounded thing. So a light edge here. And then those little scales. I want to get a little more of this top of this in the right position where this is sitting. Also some light back there. So we got this gray or this shadow coming up underneath the fish there. On the underneath part of the fish, we just, make it, it's not as dark as a shadow, but it is darker under there. It's a little darker down here. All right, so now even though I lightened this up, so those are lighter, but then this has got to get lighter too. Now this is going to get a really high highlight, but it can't be so dark for that highlight to, we don't want it to be too dark. The highlight will just jump off and look kind of weird. Doesn't want to jump off too much. I just want to work on that dome of that fish like that. All right, so it's, big tangle of stuff, but you just want to keep looking at the lights, the shadows that you're seeing. And right now the lights are they're going to be on top of the grays that I have, but they're not going to be all of the grays because there are some light shadows. This milking can is pretty dark, so I can really do something to bring that out. I'm going to take one of the darker colors I have and really push the dark. This has got a lot of blue in it, but it's okay because it's what I have out and it's going to really stand out against this. So it's a grayish metal, so I think that's going to be helpful. I also have this, let me get a little bit bigger brush, blue, and I'm basically going to get this dark can. Okay, looking back at this, and I'm just going to squint my eyes and look for darker darks. Since this blue is so dark, it's so different, I can really exploit it. There's a opening, there's a branch that comes up here, and then there's also some flowers. So what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to take this, and the flowers come over, so I'm going to basically just gesture the shapes. And don't worry about the different petals. You see how that can be just a little scribble? Easy to turn that into a flower, real easy. Then there's this, a little bit more. I figured you needed to have something in there to inspire nature, but I know you didn't want to have too complicated. Now, I don't think these are too complicated if you can gesture them. That's the trick. So I'm holding this way back on my, very far back on my hand, so that I've got this long handle, and even I'm twisting it a little bit too. Just twisting it, and you can even practice on a page if you want to see how that works. It's gesture drawing is a whole other pastime in a way, but it's so important to good painting, good drawing, good design. It's really essential. Of this, it's not just the plain gray, so I'm gonna put some of that in there. Whether we see it go up or not, it fades behind the flowers. This could be darker down here and fade up a little bit, so that it's not a clear, this and that. Let the colors sort of change on the walls. Back here, the wall is getting some light, so I'm gonna just give it a little bit of movement, dark to light. And then this comes. And it's not a huge value change, but it's something I think that'll help give us atmosphere, which is very important in a painting. How do you create atmosphere? Because that is what creates space.